Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the information you need to know and, well, we dive deep so you don't have to.
Looking forward to it.
You've shared some fascinating material with us this time, and we know folks are keen to get a handle on it without, feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. There's a lot here, but it's manageable when you break it down.
So let's unpack this. Today, we're plunging into the multifaceted role of leading worship in a church setting.
Hmm.
And our guide for this particular exploration is a chapter from Robert Little's Reimagining Preaching and Leading Worship.
Yes, and what's interesting about this section we're looking at is its focus on the groundwork. The stuff you do before the service even begins.
All right, the prep work.
Exactly. It really underscores that effective worship isn't just like spontaneous magic. It's often rooted in some pretty careful preparation.
Yeah, it's not solely about what unfolds on a Sunday morning. There's significant intention and, well, effort involved beforehand.
A lot of thought goes into it, or should.
So our mission today for you listening is to really grasp those key considerations and responsibilities that contribute to truly effective worship leadership.
Sounds good.
So where do we even begin to understand this role more deeply? What's the starting point?
Well, the author, Little, he starts by making a really important distinction. He sort of pushes back against the idea of a worship leader as a kind of charismatic TV personality.
Ah, okay, where the leader's magnetism takes center stage.
Exactly that. He argues the core emphasis needs to remain firmly, absolutely on God.
Right, it's not about the leader's personal performance, so how does he frame it instead?
Well, Little introduces this really thought-provoking analogy. He likens the worship leader to a governor, or maybe a helmsman of a ship.
A helmsman, okay. That paints a picture. Could you expand on that comparison a bit? What's the significance?
Certainly. So if we think about it, the congregation is the ship, right?
Okay.
And its movement, its direction is ideally in response to the Holy Spirit.
Right.
The worship leader, as the governor or helmsman, and he actually traces the word governor back to the Greek Kubernetes, which is where we get cybernetics too, meaning steersman.
Oh, interesting connection.
Yeah. So that leader is the one steering that movement. But critically, they're not dictating the course based on their own ego.
Okay.
Instead, they need to be finely attuned to the Spirit's flow, the rhythm of the worship, skillfully guiding the whole experience.
So it's about skillful guidance and responsiveness, not just imposing your own plan.
Precisely.
And part of that, I imagine, is about inspiring a sense of security. Like, if the person steering seems unsure.
That's a key point he makes. The leader needs to inspire confidence.
Why is that so crucial?
So the congregation feels secure, feels free to actually engage wholeheartedly in worship. If the leadership appears, uncertain or unprepared, that can inadvertently create a barrier.
Yeah, it makes people hesitant, holds them back.
Exactly. Gets in the way of genuine worship.
That makes perfect sense. Now, the chapter then shifts into a really practical area. This idea of the crucial pre-service inquiry. This need for a visiting preacher or worship leader to gather information beforehand. Why is that so vital? You might assume churches, especially in the same denomination, are pretty similar, right?
Well, that's exactly the trap. This raises a really important point about assumptions.
Okay.
Even within the same denomination or, relatively small geographical area, churches can have surprisingly significant variations in their traditions and practices.
Really? Like big differences?
Sometimes, yes. Assuming a universal standard can be a real misstep, a big one.
Because what one church considers completely normal,
Might be totally unfamiliar, even alienating to another congregation.
and that could lead to the exact opposite of what you intend, pushing people away instead of drawing them closer to God.
Precisely. The author uses the Lord's Supper, communion, as a prime example.
How so?
Well, he says most church administrators might just describe their practice as normal, but what is normal?
Right. The details matter.
Hugely. Will there be one distinct prayer of thanksgiving for both bread and wine, or separate prayers? Is a communion offering still taken? Is it part of the communion rite or separate? These are critical details to get straight beforehand.
Okay, so lesson learned, ask questions, ditch the assumptions.
Definitely.
And the chapter then dives into a pretty comprehensive list of key questions for preparation. Let's walk through some of these. First up, service timing.
Seems obvious, right?
Seems straightforward, yeah.
Yeah.
But why does the author emphasize confirming start and end times?
Because assuming a normal time can easily lead you astray, things drift.
Huh. Yeah, I can see that.
And even if you do ask, the answer might be a bit vague, like, oh, about an hour. Pinning down those start and, crucially, end times is fundamental for planning the service properly and just being respectful of people's time.
Good point. Need for specifics there. Okay, next, music arrangements. This sounds like it's way more complicated now than just asking, what hymn book do you use?
Oh, absolutely. Here's where things can get really interesting or complicated.
Uh-oh.
The author rightly calls it a potential minefield.
A minefield. Why?
Well, think about it. It could involve anything from pre-recorded backing tracks downloaded from the internet to physical CDs, a full live band, maybe just a pianist or organist, or maybe acoustic guitar.
Wow. Okay. Lots of possibility.
Then you've got lyric projection words on a screen, which often means dealing with copyright licenses, like CCLI.
Ah, the admin side.
Exactly. Understanding the precise musical setup is crucial to avoid any, last-minute technical glitches or just awkward moments.
Minefield sounds about right. Okay, what about notices or announcements? Who usually gives them and when? Seems minor, but maybe not.
It can hold some weight, yeah, especially in, say, smaller churches. The visiting leader or preacher might actually be expected to deliver the announcements.
Really? Okay.
So knowing that ahead of time means you can prepare, weave them in smoothly rather than suddenly having a list thrust at you.
Right, avoid being caught off guard. Good thinking. Then there's the whole area of engaging with children and families. The text mentions things like a children's address, family talk, theme for the week, even a thought for the day. Sounds like specific preparation is needed there.
Precisely. Each of those suggests a different kind of input, a distinct approach, and needs content that's right for that specific moment and audience.
So you need to know what's expected to prepare something appropriate.
Exactly. Tailored content is key.
And then the logistics of young people leaving for their classes, knowing when and how that happens, seems important for flow.
It is. It just helps manage those transitions smoothly without causing unnecessary disruption to the main worship time.
Okay, the offering. That's definitely seen some changes, hasn't it? Post-COVID especially.
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating is just the variety now.
Like what?
Some churches use stationary plates or boxes at the doors. Others still pass a collection bag or plate during the service. Then there's the question of whether the offering is specifically blessed or dedicated with a prayer.
Right.
And even where the collected offering is placed. The author points out potential sensitivities some might have about putting money on or very near the communion table.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't specifically thought about that potential sensitivity mixing money and the sacred element.
It's something to be aware of, certainly.
Good point. What about special items or recurring themes? These seem fairly obvious things to ask about, I suppose.
They are, but still crucial to confirm. Are they in a particular liturgical season, like Lent, Advent, Easter? Is it Harvest Festival? Are there any specific, maybe locally significant elements that must be included in the service order?
So you can align your contribution properly.
Exactly. It ensures you're working with the existing rhythm and focus of that church, not against it.
Makes sense. And finally, knowing who else is participating. Bible readers, welcomers, people leading prayers.
Absolutely. It's just about getting a sense of the team for that service, making sure everyone knows their part, coordinating smoothly. This whole pre-service info gathering really lays the foundation.
A solid foundation for a well-coordinated and hopefully meaningful worship experience for everyone.
That's the goal.
Okay, so the groundwork is laid. You've arrived early, asked the right questions. What about practical preparations right before the service starts?
Right. Boots on the ground time. First is just geography and arrival.
Getting there early.
Yes. Arriving early, he suggests at least 20 minutes before, especially for a first visit, is vital.
Why so much time?
Well, it gives you a chance to calm any nerves, meet key people like the church warden or musicians, get familiar with the actual space, and importantly, it builds in a buffer for travel snags.
Ah, yes. Traffic, parking.
Exactly. He mentions the stress of finding parking in old city centers. Having that extra time just lowers the stress level.
That definitely resonates. Nothing worse than rushing in flustered. Okay, so you're there early. What's next?
Next is getting oriented to the worship space itself.
The physical layout.
Yeah. Take a few moments, get a feel for it, figure out the best spot to lead from for good connection. Check you have enough space at the lectern or pulpit for your notes, Bible, whatever.
And tech.
And definitely, in this day and age, test any visual aids, projector, slides, make sure it all works.
With tech being so common now, I can see why understanding the AV system and who's running it is crucial.
It absolutely is. Know how the slides advance, understand the microphone.
Microphones. Any pitfalls there?
Oh, he shares a story. A cautionary tale, really, about a lapel mic left on, inadvertently broadcasting some quiet personal reflections during a hymn.
Oh no, cringeworthy.
Very. It's a stark reminder to be vigilant with audio tech. Know when you're live and when you're not.
Definitely a lesson learned there. What about connecting with the actual people, the congregation, before the service?
He strongly emphasizes the value of that pre-service interaction.
Just mingling.
Yeah, making an effort to chat, connect with members beforehand. It helps build rapport, makes them feel more connected to you, and, by extension, the service. He even suggests, if possible, attending a service before the one you lead.
Ah, to get a feel for the community.
Exactly. Familiarize yourself.
That makes perfect sense, building those initial friendly connections. Okay, and then thinking beyond just sermon prep, what other overall preparation does he recommend?
He stresses praying about it, considering what God might be wanting to do in that specific service, trying to avoid just falling into predictable patterns.
Keeping it fresh.
Yeah. And thoughtfully planning how the hymns and songs will weave into the central theme, and crucially, sharing the entire service plan with everyone involved well in advance.
How far in advance?
Ideally a week, he suggests, but at least a few days. Give people time to prepare properly.
So it's a really holistic view, seeing how all the pieces fit together for a cohesive experience.
That's the idea.
Now let's delve into one specific element he highlights. The art of hymnody, and I guess modern songs too. He starts with some history.
Yes, he gives some valuable context, traces congregational singing right back to the early church, mentions Acts, Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians.
So it's deeply rooted.
Very. Then he moves through Gregorian chant, obviously not congregational then, but then Luther's huge impact, bringing singing into the language of the people.
Right, the Reformation.
And then Isaac Watts, who was pivotal for the free churches, establishing hymns as a regular vital part of worship. Watts really emphasized hymns expressing both religious feeling and theological understanding.
It's fascinating to think of hymns as vehicles for absorbing theology just through repetition and singing together.
Absolutely. The author argues that both classic hymns and, well-written modern songs should really strive to articulate theological truth clearly and faithfully.
But do they always?
Well, he wisely observes that relatively few songs, old or new, truly stand the test of time and resonate across generations. Quality varies.
So when it comes to actually choosing hymns and songs for a service, what criteria should leaders keep in mind?
The main goal, he argues, should be finding hymns with sound, solid theology.
Okay, theology first.
But also ones that are, and he uses this term, earworms.
Earworms? You mean catchy?
Basically, yeah. Memorable, relatively easy to pick up. The idea is to maximize the chance that the theology sticks, that it actually influences how people live. He also brings in Paul's guidance from 1 Corinthians 14. Worship should be fitting, orderly, and build up the church.
Right, edification. And he offers a specific framework for selection, doesn't he? Like 4 or 5 hymns.
He does, a pretty practical structure. First, something focused on praise and thanksgiving.
Okay, start with praise.
Second, maybe one linked thematically to the children's or family talk, if there was one.
Connect the dots.
Third, something related to the Bible reading for the day, or perhaps about prayer.
Deeper reflection.
And finally, the last hymn, aiming to affirm the sermon's main points and kind of energize people for their week ahead, their work and witness.
That's a really useful logical flow. What about style? Just pick favorites.
No, he warns against just picking favorites. Variety is key, he contends, to stop things feeling monotonous.
So
Mix it up. Traditional and contemporary, upbeat and reflective, long and short, maybe some driven by melody, others more by rhythm. He even mentions considering the different meters found in hymn books, CM, SM.
Meters. It's like poetic structure.
Exactly. Common meter, short meter, long meter. Metrical indexes in older hymn books help match tunes to words. It adds another layer of variety.
And the tune itself is important, not just the words.
Hugely important. Music makes things memorable. Now, many modern songs have one set tune, but lots of older hymns have multiple tunes.
So you need to choose the right one.
Yes, appropriateness matters. Does the mood of the tune fit the lyrics? Is it one the congregation actually knows and can sing well? He tells a funny story about the tune Lef.
Lef. What about it?
Apparently, it used to get suggested for almost any hymn in long meter, regardless of whether the tune's rather somber mood actually fit the words.
Huh. So, know your congregation's repertoire and abilities, and be mindful of the mood match.
Definitely. Specify the words and a suitable, singable tune.
Okay. What about introducing new songs? Can that be tricky?
It can be. His advice is introduce the new within the context of the familiar.
How does that work?
He draws a parallel to Jesus' teaching, Matthew 13, bringing out treasures old and new. Don't spring a totally unknown song on people right at the start of the service.
Why not at the start?
Because that's often when you're trying to build confidence and unity. A familiar opening helps everyone get going together. Introduce new stuff later, maybe.
Good tip. And lastly, on hymns, he mentions the leader's own participation.
Yes, strongly. Your own willingness to sing,
Hmm.
even if you're not, a professional singer.
Like me.
Well, your wholehearted participation sends a powerful signal. It shows you're invested, part of it. And that helps foster worship that's intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally satisfying for everyone.
It encourages everyone else. So bringing all these different threads together, the questions, the prep, the hymns, the author comes back to this idea of advanced planning. Why hammer that home again?
Because it really is fundamental. Starting early gives you the breathing room, especially if it's an unfamiliar church, to gather all that vital info about their style, their practices, who they are.
Gets rid of the guesswork.
Right. And it allows time for proper reflection on the theme, careful selections of music, and crucially, getting the service plan out to everyone else involved. Readers, musicians, prayer leaders, so they have adequate time to prepare too. It's about respect for the whole team.
Okay, let's wrap up this deep dive. What's the core takeaway you think our listeners should carry with them about effective worship leadership from this source?
I think the central idea is that truly effective worship leadership,
Mm-hmm.
it's a thoughtful, detailed, quite demanding role. It goes way beyond just delivering a sermon or picking some songs.
It's more than meets the eye.
Much more. It needs diligent prep, real sensitivity to the specific context and traditions of that congregation, and always keeping the focus on guiding people towards God, not drawing attention to yourself.
That's a really clear and, I think, important summary. Thanks. And for our final thought today, maybe consider the services you attend. What elements of that pre-service prep we've discussed might have really made a difference in making it meaningful? Or maybe were there times something felt overlooked?
Good question to ponder.
And how does thinking about the worship leader as a governor or helmsman, that guiding role, maybe change how you see their responsibilities? It's definitely worth thinking about the unseen work that goes into our shared worship.
Indeed. Lots to reflect on there.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.